Rob's on there. How you doing? Yes, mate. Good. Smithy. Lincoln.
Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm good. God, state of my bonnet. Look at that.
Mate,
Jesus.
same thing. I was looking at mine going, what is that all about?
I know. Madness, mate. So,
How
mate,
are you?
we've never actually met or spoken. Obviously, I'm aware of what you do through diabetes and stuff. So tell me a bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so we've been, the last 2 or 3 years really, been trying to set up, certainly the diabetes football community has been a big part of what we've been up to. Really just trying to encourage people with a condition to come together, get further support, advice, guidance, using obviously the vehicle of football as a powerful way of trying to make things happen. And it's been really good. It's gone really well. It really, because, and I don't know whether you'd have felt it yourself, obviously with having been diagnosed recently, but the feeling that you have living with the condition involved in sport, I always felt was challenging. Felt a little bit like you didn't fit in completely. Certainly growing up in that kind of mainstream sport, trying to encourage that and try and change it a little bit, and that's what we've been trying to do for the last 2-3 years. So yeah, mate, we've been doing some great stuff. We're desperate to get you down for a kick around. I reckon you can lace your trainers up and get involved.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I've seen you've got a bit in the locker. So you play for Wales, is that right? You're a Welsh international futsal player.
Yeah. So I've got 10 caps for the Welsh international futsal team. Been representing them for about 3 or 4 years. I've got a little bit in the locker. I'm getting a little bit older now. This thing's starting to slow down. My next birthday's 30, so it's
Oh, mate.
I'm getting there. I'm at the back end now, but yeah, a little bit in the locker. But most of my efforts really have been using some of that experience and maybe some of the stuff in and around football to try and support others in the last few years. Because, as I just said, diabetes has been a tough ride, and just trying to make a little bit of a difference using some of that really to back it up and support people.
When were you diagnosed? Well, how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I was 8.
Oh, that is brutal.
So
how did that come about?
It's one of those. Well, I'd be interested to hear your story as well about your diagnosis. But when
mine is crazy. Yeah, to be fair, quite rare. But yeah, tell me about yours first.
Yeah, so mine was I was 8 years old. So there's a little bit of history in my family. So my granddad had type 1 diabetes. So it was a little, I don't know, maybe spotted a little bit from my parents. They said, here's maybe some of the symptoms, classic symptoms, but it was a summer period, so I was drinking lots of water, squash and all that. So they left it a little bit, and I was losing a bit of weight, and they thought, oh, do you know what, maybe it's just the heat. And then they left it, and we got to September, and it was still happening. So then they said we should go and get him checked out, and that was what it was, early September. Classic, down the doctor's, blood test, usually the P test, to be honest, first, test the ketones, and that was straight in. I was whisked straight to hospital. This was 1999, so
wow.
The way that they did it back then was very different to the way they do it now. So I don't know if you're using the old technology, but these things have changed the world. But that was obviously nothing like that back then. So yeah, it was a whirlwind week. And do you know what? The best thing about that week was I went into it obviously awful news. By the Friday though, I always talk about is I played my first game after diagnosis. So I played 15 minutes as an 8-year-old. You just think, do you know what, I've got to get back out there and do the things that I enjoy doing. So chucked myself into it and went for it. But what about your story? I've read a little bit, but I've not heard too much.
No, I know, it's interesting actually. So I know that you've been messaging me a few times, been trying to get on, trying to meet up and stuff. Obviously during the football season, I'm quite busy with my sort of day job, working as a presenter for Sky. So I haven't been able to do this really. So it's nice for me to talk about it. I do a bit of stuff with JDRF, which is one of the biggest type 1 diabetes charities. Do some sort of ambassador stuff as well. But yeah, in terms of how my diagnosis, one sec, no sound. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You're muted. I had this problem yesterday, by the way. Right, can you just give us a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear us? Henry says no sound. Henry says you're muted. How do you unmute it?
I don't know. Oh, we can hear you. So somebody's got, yeah.
Right, can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us? I can hear you.
Yeah, I
Type
think,
1 flex.
yeah,
All the type 1s in the comments, Grace.
yeah, there's a few of
There
them
we
in
go.
there, definitely.
Jay Rowley joined 12. Thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, so my story is pretty mad, actually, mate. I was, when was it? 5 years ago. So I was, late 20s, and just felt really unwell, basically. Bizarrely went to see a specialist because I went to have some routine blood tests because I was feeling a bit fatigued and wasn't quite right. This is 3 months before my diagnosis, and they tested liver, kidney, thyroid, HbA, blood sugar, and my blood glucose was absolutely fine. It was in the normal range at that period of time. So what was I, 20, 29 at the time? Then fast forward 3 months, I had another blood test, and they said my blood was in sort of an impaired glucose tolerance phase. So I wasn't in the diabetic range, like sky high, but I wasn't I wasn't between 4 and 6. It wasn't in normal range. So they said, I think what we should do is you should see a nutritionist because maybe I'm just, consuming too many carbs or what have you. So the weird thing about mine was that it's late in life because most people get it at the age you got it.
Yeah.
Most people get it when they're teenagers or young, but you obviously can get it at any age. So from that appointment, I then became really unwell in the next months afterwards. It was about a 2-month period after that appointment that they said you need to see a nutritionist. When I went to the nutritionist, it was a period where I was just going to the toilet loads at night, all the classic symptoms, lost a lot of weight. Blah blah blah. I went there. They test my blood sugars. And obviously, for those watching who know about diabetes, a normal person. I won't use the word normal because it makes that we're not normal.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I'm quite weird in a lot of ways, but I think a healthy, non-diabetic person, should I say, will have between 4 and 6.5 or something.
Yeah.
Mine was 32, and she looked at me and went, "We need to rush you to hospital now." And obviously, at this point, I didn't have a clue what that meant. Type 1 Fletcher said that resonates with me. A lot of people probably can resonate with it. So I went again, they tested it again, and it was 31. So it was 32 and 31. They said, we need to get you to hospital. At this point, it was quite comical, actually, because my car was parked in a bay that I thought was a normal bay outside the hospital. And apparently, it was a restricted parking bay. The woman on reception went, we need to get you to hospital. This is urgent, but you need to move your car. And we can't move it because we're not insured. So I'm like, well, what's more important, getting me to hospital or moving my car? And went, well, we really need to move your. She said, I can't emphasise how much you need to go to hospital, but we do really need you to move your car because it's a space that we have to have unoccupied. So, mate, honestly, I moved my car luckily safely to a very nice woman who lived next door to the hospital. Long story short, she allowed me to put my car there. Went to the hospital. Literally didn't know what was going on. Knew very little about diabetes at this stage. I was put on a sliding scale, a glucose, sliding insulin scale. 4 nights. And then doctor, it was crazy because I still didn't know what was going on. They just said my blood sugar was high. So I didn't know at that point what that meant. Then 3 days later, having stayed in the hospital on this sliding scale, they came into the hospital bed and said, okay, you can go now. So I'm thinking, brilliant, because whenever I've been into hospital a few times before, I've had very minor things like wisdom teeth out, or I had a gastroenteritis once for a really bad case of salmonella food poisoning. So I'd been in before for a few injuries and stuff. So it'd always been in my mind, you go into hospital, right? Here's what you take to get better. When they say you can leave now, great. That's it.
All good, yeah, sorted.
So you can leave now. And I said, so what does this mean? Thinking in my head, that's it done. But, well, you are a type 1 diabetic. So I said, okay, what does that mean? They went, I asked 3 questions. I said, what does that mean? They went, you need to inject yourself with insulin. I said, how often? He said, 4 times a day. I then said, how long for? The doctor said, for the rest of your life. And I said, what happens if I don't do that? And he said, you won't live. So that was when I was like, wow. It was like, welcome to the world of being type 1 diabetic. 3 questions I asked consisted of, you've got to inject yourself 4 times a day, which is now 5 times a day for me. For the rest of your life, or you'll die. It was like, wow. So then you leave the hospital, they give you all this kit, which is like needles, lancets, insulin, strips, and it's just like, you just sort of get on with it sort of thing. And the healthcare that I've had has been good, and my dietitian, nutritionist. I saw someone for I'm not afraid to admit it, a counsellor. For my sort of mental well-being, because I really struggled mentally at the time of diagnosis, because I was, as I say, I was 29, so like, it was a really weird period for me. I definitely look at my life in two parts, prior to diagnosis and post-diagnosis. Then you're sitting at home, and it was weird for me because it coincided with like the best period of my life career-wise and the worst period of my life personally, because I background is I worked on Soccer AM for many years, doing a bit of everything, bit of stuff in front of the camera, but I always wanted to get into presenting, and I got my presenter's contract. It must have been a year after that, and then obviously it snowballed to doing, doing other stuff with Sky and working with Sport, and I worked with Tottenham, I've worked with England. I've been very blessed and very lucky that I've done some great stuff, and I love my job. So the last sort of 5 years has been the best time for me work-wise.
Yeah, mate. I've seen all your stuff when you was doing Soccer AM, and I thought it must have coincided with you still being on air. And I always thought, how are you finding this challenging? Because you're having to appear on camera to do bits and stuff. And how did you manage that kind of process?
It was tough because all my big breaks came literally after diagnosis. So I'd done like character stuff and sketch stuff on Soccer AM and Sky, but I'd applied for a presenter's job at Sky, got it anyway, finally got a presenter's contract, and it was like I started properly presenting shows, interviews, blah, 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 getting into radio, doing other bits and pieces. It must have been a year after diagnosis when I'm not afraid to admit I didn't have a clue how to manage my bloods, didn't know how to carb count, didn't know.
Not many of us do at the start, mate, trust me.
So it was really tough, mate, and I've not really opened up really too much about it, but I was... it was on my mind so much that my mental health took a bit. I was never depressed or diagnosed with depression. It was more anxiety for me. So I was like, I couldn't physically switch off. So I basically became really dizzy. My head was, I was constantly dizzy and like I was suffering from vertigo because of the anxiety. So much so that I went and saw a specialist through the NHS. I went and saw a specialist because I thought there was something wrong with my head, with my brain or my dizziness or inner ear thing. So I saw an ear, nose and throat specialist. I saw someone about, I did balance test. They did a scan on my brain. I saw an ear, nose and throat specialist who looked at my ears because I was so dizzy to the point where I remember getting on a train vividly about a month after diagnosis, and I had to hold on to railings because my head was spinning. And it wasn't until I got all the results back that said, there's nothing wrong with your head. There's nothing wrong with your brain, or I mean, I'm a bit weird, but there's nothing that's wrong with you in that sense. That I completely relaxed mentally, and the dizziness started to subside. Richie says shout out to our NHS.
Man,
massively agree. My sister-in-law is an NHS nurse, so I agree. A lot of Spurs in the comments I like as well. Coy's coming Spurs like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of Spurs in here. Not a lot of Villa. Need some Villa in here.
We'll get into football in a bit. So it was really tough, mate, mentally, I found, because it's what people who don't know the condition, and I never criticise people who don't understand it. Obviously, people say some things that are a bit, unacceptable sometimes, but I don't blame them for saying that because they don't have an understanding of the condition, and I didn't have an understanding of the condition prior to having it. But I think the hardest thing for me is just how much you have to put into it. So every single time I get a phone call or an email or anything that's work or social related, where I've got an interview in Manchester, I've got to get on a train, or my mates were going out for a drink on a Saturday night, or I'm doing radio, so I'm up at 4:30 and not 5. My first reaction is, right, when am I going to have breakfast? When am I going to do my baseline injection? When am I going to change my needles? When am I going to adapt? It's on my mind more than anything. I mean, I can have the busiest week with work. I can have the busiest week socially. But diabetes is on my mind more than any other part of my life. It's just relentless is the word I use to describe it. It's absolutely relentless. But one thing I'm trying to do more of is talk about it, because I'm just seeing some of the comments coming through now, people saying it's great to hear me talk about it, because the one thing that I found is when I found out Henry Slade's got it and he played rugby for England in a World Cup, or Jeremy Irvine's got it and he's a main actor, or Steve Redgrave who won a gold medal with it, I get so much positivity from seeing people that have achieved something through the condition. Do you know what I mean by that?
It's the same for you. If people see your example now and what you're doing and your achievements now and you being on the television all the time, because we're seeing you so much more now. Like you say, you've got these great gigs now on Sky. You have that ability now, and I think what you were saying in terms of you found it tough to open up, but you opening up, you sharing it makes, as you're listening, all the comments and whatever you do, they put smiles on people's faces, because they start to believe that whatever they put their mind to, they might be able to do and achieve, and it hasn't affected your career and how well you've done by being diabetic and being type 1.
No, it hasn't, and that was a worry for me, is that when I got diagnosed, I didn't want it to prevent me getting any opportunities or work-wise, and it hasn't. And Sky have been brilliant, to be fair with me, but I was always worried that would someone say he can't do this because, you know, will that prevent him doing anything? And it hasn't for me so far, but obviously I'm aware that, you know, I have got a condition that needs to be managed. So whenever I do a show, a lot of people know I have a Lucozade Sport on hand. Yeah. I always make my bloods run a little bit higher prior to going on air, because
I was going to say, have you ever had a hypo on air, or have you ever
gone?
That
is one of my biggest fears, having a hypo on air. That is a constant concern. So what I do, I've got the so on this side, I changed it last notes on that. I've got the you know, the Freestyle Libre.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a very easy way to test, but it is a concern of mine, having a hypo on air. How I manage that is I always run a little bit higher. So I'll be like, I'd like to run high single digits, 8, 9, prior to going on air, because if it goes high for a little period of time, it's fine. But to have a hypo on air would be you know, would be terrible, really.
What was your first one like? Do you remember your first hypo?
Yeah, I do, mate. It was my first hypo, or my first on air.
Yeah, first hypo. What was that? You know, experience of that like?
Hypo it was just a bit weird. I didn't really know what was going on. I just felt like I didn't have any energy. I just felt like I wasn't really with it. And it's weird, mate, because since I've been diagnosed, it was like the big problem I had was opening up to people and like injecting in front. So I used to, if I had a hypo, I used to run to the toilet at Sky and hide. If I needed to inject, I used to run to the toilet. You know, even if I was out with it was always all right with mates and family, because I'm very lucky that I've got a very close-knit group, close-knit family that are very supportive and a real close-knit group of mates. So I never found it tough in that situation. But with work and with just the nature of my industry, I'm often working with people like sometimes that I haven't worked with before, or different camera people or producers or whatever, that I was like, if this person doesn't know me as well, and suddenly, what is this I'm injecting? What if I'm feeling a bit dizzy? What am I doing? It was quite hard to open up. So a big moment for me came, mate, it was probably about a year after diagnosis, or maybe 2 years, when I just put a tweet out, because I'm obviously got, you know, an all right following on Twitter and Instagram. Yeah. I put a tweet out saying, you know, I really struggled. I was diagnosed with this. I had really bad, suffered with anxiety. You know, I was told I was a week away from a coma, basically. So I mean, physically, I was at rock bottom, mentally a terrible place. And it wasn't until I put that on that the feedback I got was I mean, I'm not afraid to admit it. I was actually crying with emotion, just pure raw emotion, with the feedback of. It was what really got me was like, I'll never forget, this guy said, I've just read this to my son, who's 6 years old. It's brought a tear to his eye because he's a diabetic, and he's really struggling, and you've helped him so much. And then I had loads of messages from parents who'd had it, so I reached out to a few of them. I just thought, wow, if I can help one person, because that's how I felt when I hear people that have got it, and I see even what you're doing, like playing professional futsal with it, it's like hats off to you and people like you that are spreading the message. I just think, I feel like I've got a responsibility now to spread the message and speak more openly about it. The problem I had, and I know that Dan Piper's in the comments, he's someone that helped me out a lot during my diagnosis. He wants to do stuff for me. The problem I had for the first year is that I wasn't, without sounding like a, you know, well, to put it honestly, I wasn't brave enough to open up about it. Basically, I wasn't in a good enough place. I didn't want to open up and say things were all right to people when I wasn't in the right place myself. Do you know what I mean? So for a year,
17 years like that. I've had it 20 years now, and I've spent 16, 17 years hiding it, more because, and almost what you said to begin with, was that like the fear of how people would perceive it, you know, and you said about your employer, I feared it in sport because I was always trying to push myself with the sport and the football and then the futsal and stuff. I always feared that somebody would look at me in a changing room and go, do you know what? If it was nip and tuck on ability, I'll pick the guy that hasn't got the diabetes because it'll be easier.
Wow.
So I always
exactly how I felt. Exactly how I felt. That I didn't want it to be if there was nothing to compare in any work scenario or sports scenario that would work against me in any way. That's exactly how I felt.
And that's what I think that's, you know, that, and also when you're like, you're putting yourself in an environment where it's all about performance, like really good, like for yourself, obviously on TV camera, your performance on camera has got to be bang on. Same with sport. When you're in that environment, it encourages you to be perfect. So if you show a chink in your armor through having a condition, automatically, like it's cutthroat, it's performance, you know, and I expect people to just chop you. And obviously in those situations, you can't really, in sport and with presenting, you've got to be, I suppose, at the top of your game. So you have to almost like kind of, I've always felt I've had to prove myself like twice fold, because I've got to prove that I'm good, and then I've got to prove that I can manage diabetes on top of that to make sure I stay good consistently. So it's such a challenging battle that you have to get, you know, the performance that you need to do well in whatever you do.
Yeah, mate, it's weird you said that, because I felt exactly the same. I worried that it would work against me somehow, but it hasn't. The thing about the condition is it doesn't prevent you doing anything. You can do, I mean, we've seen there's people that have won gold medals, run marathons with it. I mean, how people run a marathon with the condition, I personally don't know, to be honest. But it doesn't prevent you doing anything. It's just, I suppose sometimes I struggle with really opening up to how relentless it is and how much time I think about it, because I don't want to burden people, or like you don't want to constantly go on about it with family members to make them upset or sound like a broken record. But it is. I don't think you can really explain any condition to anyone that doesn't have that condition. You know, I've spoken to people with other conditions, and I'll be honest to say I don't understand those particularly well. That's not. I mean, it might be ignorance on my part, but I think until you actually have a condition where you need to spend hours a day understanding it, and like, you know, to carb count food for it. I mean, I don't personally carb count, for instance. I don't want to encourage people not to do that. But for me, because of my life, so I'm a bit of a fussy eater anyway, so I have a bit of I have a quite healthy diet, but I only, you know, I'll eat the same breakfast, for instance. At canteen at work, there'll be a lot of options, but I'll stick to 3 or 4 options. So I know roughly, so how I've learned to do it is I know roughly what insulin to give myself based on each meal. If I go out for meals, I will spend more time with it, but I treat it very, very seriously. But carb counting for me, because things like adrenaline play a big part in doing a live or sport, or if you have an alcohol, that I've often carb counted and the results are different anyway from having the same food. So I just look at how my body reacts, and I've got a little book that I write down certain foods that I know that I need to take certain things with, and if I have a takeaway, I'll have a similar order to what I had last time and remember what I had. So I sort of do it like that. But it is a minefield, and I mean, I suppose I'm fortunate in a way because I got it quite late. I had 29 years of perfect blood sugar, so I mean, I'm fortunate in that sense that you know, any long-term problems like that that may be a positive to me. The negative for me is that it was so tough adapting to it as an adult. You know what is happening, but a big sort of motivation of mine is you know, doing more with JDRF and diabetes and you know, helping younger kids out that have got it, because it must be, I mean, you had it when you were 8, it must have been, you know, very tough as a kid when you're running life anyway at that stage to deal with it.
I would 100% agree. It very much comes down to that fact you were talking about a minute ago in terms of how you felt that nobody else understands you unless they live with a condition. And I felt for a long time, you know, I didn't. And also, as technology's got better, you've got a better opportunity to reach out and connect with people. Growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, those connections and things like that weren't really there. So I always felt like I was on my own. And you're mixing in a kind of a mainstream environment all of the time where you don't know anybody else living with a condition and all that sort of stuff, which now has been a massive game changer for me and many others with, you know, with the diabetes football community. You know, we've got 50 lads in a WhatsApp group that at the moment, whilst things are not good, are talking so much about different things. And that's been the biggest change for me, and feeling comfortable to share and talk about the condition in the last few years. That's helped me both get better management and feel more comfortable in my own skin. But growing up, as you can imagine, as a teenager, and you know, that classic, I just want to fit in, and you just can't, because like you said, going off, sneaking off to do injections. I'd go to the changing room toilets, and you can imagine what non-league toilets are like, football grounds, to go and do an injection.
Yeah.
Oh, you shouldn't do it. It was so unhygienic, but you did it because you were so worried about trying to fit in that like you would just go and hide away from it. And then you've got the challenges of how management changed as well, because when I was first diagnosed, I had 2 injections a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was so variable on how you would feel, because you just didn't know from 1 minute whether it was going to go high, low. You were just like, it was guesswork. And then it started to get better. Then it went on to like 4 injections a day when I was a teenager. And then obviously, the developments around the pump and this continuous glucose monitors have all come in the last 4 or 5 years. But those have made a huge difference. But I think the biggest difference for me, and what's helped me develop as a person living with diabetes and managing it, is actually the whole mechanism of talking to others with the condition. And it's not just the others with the condition, it's the ones that share my interest in football and sport, because then you've got this like natural connection around sport that just makes it effortless. The whole thing becomes effortless, and they get the feeling of running on a football pitch and going, I'm worried about having a hypo, or
I found football really tough actually when I was
going to ask you how you've been back to playing.
My bloods were like, they'd be like 16, 17 before kickoff, because I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, and then they'd be just sky high because I had no energy at all. I mean, I probably lost the seat. I mean, I don't play. Well, to tell a lie, I don't play Sunday League anymore or competitive football due to the fact I work a few weekends and stuff, and I'm sort of putting my focus into career and stuff. But also the last few years, I just found it tough. Got very leggy, energy levels were sapped. My bloods had to run high to play 90 minutes. I mean, I see your numbers. You're obviously very well controlled. I'm probably not as well controlled as you are, but I am very well controlled. But obviously you play football at a very high level, and you probably train regularly. But for me, because I was only playing on a Sunday, I'd have no football in the week, or I'd train maybe for half an hour in the week. You're then having no football, and then you're putting your body through 90 minutes on a Sunday as a Sunday league player with probably not the best warm up or hygiene, or no offence to any Oxford Royals lads in the comments. Do you know what I mean? It's not Premier League.
I know what you're saying.
There'd be days where I remember actually saying to manager and coach, people, my hammy's a bit tight, or I need to come off. And it was basically because my bloods were low or high, and I couldn't. I used to every half time put my bag to the side, prick my finger in hiding away. Looking back on it, really, it was. I should have just been honest, really, but it's so tough. You're group for the lads, and you're playing football or you work. It's very tough to just suddenly go, I need to test my blood sugars in a game where you're 0-0 and everyone's shouting at each other. It's not. Do you know what I mean? It's quite difficult to do that.
Pressure of getting it right, isn't it, as well? Like from my perspective, I'm running off. Trying to. I'm with obviously a futsal games, roll on, roll off subs, and I'm just thinking about this season playing for the national team. I'm running off the court. We were live in Austria on the telly, and I'm running off the court, like grabbing my Dexcom, praying that the numbers are still okay. Because for me, I'm trying to get into a small window of glucose levels, because obviously performance, like physiologically, you need it in a good, like between sort of, I don't know, 6 and 9 to get good performance, because if you go too high, you start feeling rotten. If you go too low, you start feeling rotten. So you've also got that added pressure attached to it in sport, where you can't let your teammates down, like you were alluding to. Really, you don't want to let them down, and sometimes it's not easy calling time on it. I've found that hardest is when I've had to turn to the gaffer and go, because it's just for whatever reason I've just got it all wrong and I can't play, and I found that the hardest.
One thing I will say though is I think people like all of my teammates and colleagues, generally they're all really good people. I think a lot of it is psychological. We think we can't do that because of how people react, but actually, whenever I have opened up to it, whenever I had spoken to teammates playing football or colleagues, they have been very understanding. So I think people just need to. The hardest bit is open up. If people are struggling, I've seen a lot of people in the comments saying, that they've struggled to talk or what have you, and it helps people. I think just talk to people, or like-minded people with the condition, open up, and I found that very hard looking back on it, but I'm glad I did open up, because it helped me and it helps others, and I think we shouldn't be worried about what people think all the time. and just be honest, really. But yeah, I found it really tough because I've only had it, I haven't had it long, whereas you've had it for, I suppose, decades, haven't you, really?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. It all changed an awful lot in those decades. But yeah, mate, it's never been easy. It doesn't. I think it just changes over time. And as you get, I suppose the longer you have it, the more risk of complications. And not ashamed to say I've got, some slight concerns around one of my eyes, which has come as a result of living with it for so long. And it's the nature of the beast that we have living with diabetes. But you just do the best you can, and I think that's all I would say to anyone is you just try your best. You're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but you just keep giving it your best for as long as you can.
Yeah, well said. When am I coming down then, mate? Have a kick about with you boys.
Well, we normally train in Worcester, but we've got a London team, so it's wherever you're closest to, mate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie, London's more convenient than Worcester.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can imagine it. So, but obviously with where we are at the minute, nothing's happening, but we've got a TDFC London team. So the boys, they played in a futsal league last year. So hopefully when we get things back to normal and after this coronavirus stuff, we'll get the sessions. But I'll let you know. I'll make sure you've got some times and stuff. And I want to see if Frankie Fryer can make it into the old UK diabetes team.
That's old school there, mate.
I know, that's what I remember though. I remember Frankie Fryer so well.
Yeah, that is old school. I don't know if I've got the jacket out. Yeah, I think the jacket's in the cupboard somewhere. But yeah, mate, I'm definitely keen to come up. I mean, I've got a lot of people saying come to Worcester. Worcester, worth the trip. Don't be afraid to travel to Worcester. Look, I've got nothing against Worcester. I mean, people are getting. It's just a lot further away than London. Right, I'll come to Worcester then.
JT, come to Bosnia.
Come to
Worcester.
Worcester.
The tournament is.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely keen. I'm a big, thanks to what you guys are doing as well. I think it's really admirable what you're doing. I've seen you got a bit in your locker as well, so I'm keen to come up and have a bit of footy. Maybe we do this again. I don't know. Next couple of weeks we'll do this more regularly. Let people know. I mean, if people want me to talk about it more, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but if anyone wants to shout me out, any diabetics on Instagram or anything they want me to help with, let us know. But I'm no expert, to be honest. But just throwing it out there, really.
Yeah, well, your experience though, mate. I think it's your where you are at the moment in the media, and you're an example. What you're doing is setting a blaze and a trail for other people with diabetes to believe that, as I said earlier, that they can achieve stuff. So even you just sharing what it's like to be involved in the media, and how you have to manage that condition to do, perform. You're interviewing big names in the terms of sport. Some of the biggest footballers in the country. People, love to see that, and the fact that you're doing it with type 1 diabetes is a big thing for people. So I think anyone would appreciate you just sharing it. If you feel comfortable, that's always the thing, is how do you feel comfortable?
Yeah,
how do you do it? But
yeah,
I think there's you can make a massive difference, mate. Definitely,
mate. Well, let's keep in touch. And let's definitely work on. I'll hit you up on Instagram. We'll work on a few projects going forward, maybe.
Yes, quality, mate.
Right,
Appreciate the chat.
Mate. I'm gonna go and check my bloods.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, 4.9 or maybe 4. Right, see you later.
Yeah, see you later, mate.
Thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good weekend, pal. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.